Most people practice complex skills by focusing on everything equally at once. You can feel it slowing you down. Your attention gets spread so thin that nothing actually improved. Here's what the research shows: that approach is mathematically wrong. By the end, you'll understand why focusing on one component at a time produces 2x better results. The difference is not subtle, it compounds across months of practice. Ask yourself right now, can you actually break down the skill you're working on into separate pieces? Or are all the pieces tangled together? Most people never answer that question, so they stay stuck. In a minute, I'll show you the study that proves focus component practice works for interdependent skills. But first, understand why equal attention creates equal mediocrity. Consider how you practice music. Your fingers need to move fast, but they also need to hit the right notes, and your rhythm needs to stay locked, and your dynamics need to shape the phrase all at once. So what happens? You practice the whole song slowly, and none of the components actually get strong. You're spreading your attention 4 directions simultaneously. The brain doesn't consolidate anything. You're still at the same level 6 months later, wondering why hours don't equal progress. This is the hidden killer in skill development. Interdependent skills look impossible to practice because you can isolate them. A tennis player can't practice the serve in a vacuum because serving also requires footwork, timing, and court sense all firing together. A chess player can't practice tactics in pure isolation because tactical strength depends on position evaluation, piece coordination, and the ability to see threats. Language learners can't separate grammar from listening from speaking because real conversation requires all 3 simultaneously. So most people default to practicing everything at once, maintaining the same ratio of weakness across all components, and wondering why they're not improving. The research reveals something different. A landmark study on the video game Space Fortress showed exactly this dynamic. Researchers took learners with identical starting skill levels and gave them identical practice time, identical everything except one variable. What they were told to focus attention on, the control group, played the game normally, trying to manage all the skill components together. A second group was instructed to direct their attention specifically to ship control mechanics. A third group focused specifically on mine placement strategy. A fourth group rotated their focus ship control for 3 sessions, then mine placement for 3 sessions, then back to ship control. Same total practice hours, same game, different attention instruction. After 6 sessions, the results were staggering. The control group, managing everything equally, scored around 1,000 points. The groups that focused on one component scored roughly 1,500 points, 50% higher. But the group that rotated focus between components scored approximately 2,000 points. That's not a marginal improvement, that's mastery acceleration. And it wasn't talent, it was method. Here's what the mechanism actually is. When your attention focuses on a single component of an interdependent skill, your brain starts building a discrete mental model of that one piece. You're not distracted by managing the other components. You can observe the specific inputs and outputs. You notice patterns you'd miss if your attention was split. You make corrections faster. You consolidate the learning deeper. Then you shift focus to the next component and build a second discrete model. Then a third when you return to the component you started with. Something remarkable happens. The components have integrated on their own. Your brain connected them. The 2 separate mental models are now one coordinated system. And because each component is now stronger and more refined, the integrated whole is far more effective than if you tried to build them all together from the start. Pay attention to this part. Most people never understand why this works, so they think it's some trick that works only for video games. It works everywhere. A guitarist who isolates the specific 3-note pattern causing the bottleneck, practices it at half speed with a metronome, focusing only on finger precision, does that consistently for 2 weeks, then shifts focus to the timing variation within those notes for another 2 weeks, then adds it back into the full song. That guitarist progresses in 5 weeks, what normally takes 5 months. A basketball player who spends 3 sessions drilling footwork specifically, then 3 sessions drilling shooting mechanics specifically, then 2 sessions drilling the footwork shooting integration, shoots a more consistent 3-pointer than a player who practices shooting with full game footwork every session. A language learner who focuses on listening comprehension through targeted listening drills for 2 weeks then isolates grammar patterns for 2 weeks, then speaks with simplified vocabulary for 1 week, acquires fluency 4,060% faster than immersion, only learners at the same time. Investment, individual progress varies by starting level and consistency. The science is clear on why component practice works for interdependent skills. Cognitive load theory shows that attention is a bottleneck. When a skill has multiple interdependent parts, trying to manage all of them at once exceeds working memory. Your brain can't build coherent mental models of any of them because the processing power is already exhausted. You're in survival mode, not learning mode. When you focus on a single component, cognitive load drops dramatically. Your brain has bandwidth to notice details, build accurate models, and consolidate the learning. You're not spreading yourself thin anymore, you're accumulating depth in one direction. Then when you shift focus, you're building a second depth. The components don't stay separate because they're interdependent. They naturally trigger each other. The improvement in component 1 makes the others easier. The learning from focusing on component 2 reveals new subtleties in component 1. They integrate automatically. Most miss this completely. They think component practice means the components will stay separate. They worry they'll build a strange fragmented skill that doesn't work in full integration. The opposite happens when you focus on one component at a time. You're actually building integration faster because each component is learning strongly, and strong components integrate more cleanly than weak ones. Fighting for attention. Weak components practicing together is like adding sand to a foundation that hasn't set yet. The structure stays unstable. Strong components practicing together is like adding finished architectural pieces. The structure locks. Reset. This changes the game. Now understand where most people fail in implementing this method. They focus on one component, yes, but they choose the wrong component to start with. Or they rotate too frequently, switching before the component is strong enough, or they return to full integration too early, before the second component has consolidated. These timing errors tank the advantage. The framework is simple, but the execution requires precision. Here's the application structure. First, identify which components make up your skill, not vaguely. Write them down. For piano, it might be finger independence, hand position maintenance, rhythm consistency, dynamic control, and reading pace. For public speaking, it might be vocal control, body language, content recall, audience awareness, and pacing. For chess, it might be opening principles, tactical pattern recognition, endgame technique, time management, and opponent analysis. Most people can't even name the components, so they default to practicing the whole thing. Write them down. Second, diagnose which component is the limiting factor, which one, if it improved 20%, would move your overall performance the most. That's where you start. Not the easiest component, the component that's holding back the whole system for a tennis player. If serve accuracy is 60%, but footwork is 85%, accuracy is the bottleneck. Focus there first. For a musician, if rhythm is 70%, but finger speed is 95%, rhythm is limiting the ceiling. Start there. This is the part people overlook. They practice what they're already good at because it feels productive, and you can feel your growth slowing down. The other components yet. Track the limiting component in isolation. For the tennis player, 20 serves daily. Track accuracy percentage. Adjust technique based on which angles fail. For the musician, focus 10 minutes on rhythm-only practice. Measure tempo stability across 3 takes. Adjust if tempo drifts more than 5%. For the chess player, daily tactical puzzles on a single pattern type. Log solution speed and accuracy. Advance to next pattern tier only after 90% accuracy. Individual progress varies. Third, set the rotation timeline. Most learners need 24 weeks on a single component to build meaningful strength. If you rotate faster, the component never consolidates. If you wait longer than 46 weeks, the other components atrophy and your integration becomes lopsided. When you shift focus, write down what improved in component 1 before you stop. This matters. You're building a mental map of progress. Then shift to component 2 and focus with the same intensity. Don't touch component 1 except in full integration sessions. Fourth, reintegration is the final component. After you've focused on 2 or 3 components individually, spend sessions practicing the full skill but with your attention still selective. First session back, focus on how component 1, now stronger, works with the whole system. Notice what changed. Second session, focus on component 2's integration. Third session, just play freely. Let it integrate. Then you're ready to identify the next limiting component and repeat. Now it gets real. Most people underestimate how much discomfort focus practice creates. When you focus only on one component, that component feels mechanical and fragmented. Your body or mind knows something's missing. The urge to return to full skill practice is strong because full practice feels more normal. Even though it's less effective, this is where discipline enters. You stay focused on the component. The discomfort is data, not a failure signal. It means the component is being strengthened in isolation, which is exactly what should happen. Picture a pianist learning a Chopin etude. She identifies that her left-hand arpeggios are the bottleneck. She can handle the right-hand melody, but the left hand rushes, so she pulls out just the left-hand part and practices it at half speed with a metronome, ignoring the right hand entirely. For 2-week sessions are technically boring. The arpeggio isolated feels pointless, but she tracks tempo 40 BPM, or accuracy 85%, each week pushing to 95% before increasing speed. After 2 weeks, the left hand is locked. She shifts to the right hand melody in isolation for 1 week, then brings them together. The integration happens in 3 sessions instead of 6 weeks. Results vary based on consistency and current level. A martial artist identifies that footwork is the limiting component in combinations. Most of his training time goes to hand speed and power. He spent years there, but his footwork is sloppy, so he does an entire week of footwork, only drills, stepping patterns, angles, positioning, transitions, no striking, just feet. It feels incomplete, but every session he's measuring step accuracy in tight angles, transition speed, between stances, balance during off-angle strikes. The discomfort is the point. After 1 week of focus, his footwork foundation is strong. When he returns to full combinations, his power and hand speed can finally express themselves through solid footing. Results vary based on consistency and current level. A language learner identifies that speaking fluency is the bottleneck. She can listen passively and read with reasonable comprehension, but speaking requires real-time grammar assembly, and she freezes. So she isolates speaking practice for 3 weeks. All practice time goes to speaking, even simplified conversations. Grammar is secondary, vocabulary is simplified, but she tracks words produced per minute, grammatical errors per minute, hesitation pauses, speaking alone without the pressure of also listening perfectly. After 3 weeks, her speaking foundation is strong. She returns to integrated conversation, and her listening and reading actually make sense in context. Now, results vary based on consistency and current level. Here's where most quit before they reach it. The plateau appears around week 3 or 4 of component focus. Improvement slows. The component doesn't feel like it's getting stronger. This is the consolidation phase. Your brain is organizing the learning. The plateau isn't failure. It's when the real consolidation happens. Most people panic and return to full-skill practice because at least full practice shows variety and progress feels visible. They quit in the consolidation zone. The researchers who studied focused attention also tracked what happened to practitioners who gave up during the plateau. Their integration advantage vanished. They fell back to control group levels of improvement. Patience is a technical skill. This changes everything. When you understand that plateaus are navigable, stay on the component, add micro variation to the focus. If the plateau feels stuck for the pianist, if the arpeggio tempo plateau hits at week 3, shift focus from speed to dynamic control within the same arpeggio. Same component, different angle. For the martial artist, if footwork plateaus, add unpredictable direction changes or fatigue conditions. Same component, elevated complexity. For the language learner, if speaking speed plateaus, add speaking on a timer or speaking about unfamiliar topics. Same component, elevated difficulty. You're not returning to full skill. You're rotating within the component focus. This breaks the plateau without losing the consolidation advantage. Pay attention to this part. Integration is where most people overcorrect. After 4 weeks of component focus, they jump straight back to full, fast, normal practice. The components aren't ready for that yet. They need staged reintegration. Spend the first reintegration week practicing at 70% normal speed or complexity. with attention still selective on the component that just focused. Let it feel awkward. Let the other components remember they exist. Second reintegration week, practice at 90% normal speed with attention more distributed. Third week, normal full practice. This 3-week reintegration prevents the components from backsliding and lets the integration happen cleanly. Track integration progress differently. Session 1 of reintegration. Same component at 70% speed. Measure accuracy. Session 2 component at 85% speed. Measure accuracy plus integration quality. Session 3 full speed. Measure overall output. This isn't measuring the component anymore. You're measuring the system. Individual progress varies by starting level and The framework compounds across months after you've cycled through your 3 to 4 main components once. Cycle again. But now the components are stronger. So the second cycle builds speed and automaticity instead of basic competence. Third cycle adds variability and pressure. Fourth cycle develop creative application. Each cycle through the components builds a different layer of the skill. Most practitioners think 1 or 2 weeks on each component is enough training for life. It's not. The cycling is how you build mastery. It's how the interdependent components learn to work together at high levels. Most miss this completely. They think focused practice is a shortcut to skip ahead and get good faster. It is faster, yes, but it's not a shortcut. It's harder work because you have to tolerate the mechanical feeling of isolated components. It requires discipline to stay focused on one thing when the whole skill calls to you. It demands patience through the plateau. It needs tracking and measurement so you know when consolidation is actually happening. It's efficient. It's not easy. Here's what the research actually shows. When you compare practitioners using focused component practice against practitioners using traditional full-skill practice over a 6-month period, the focused practitioners achieve in 6 months what the full-skill practitioners achieve in 12 to 18 months. It's not a tiny margin. It's roughly 2x faster progress. But this only happens if you do all the steps: component identification, limiting factor diagnosis, focused isolation, plateau navigation, staged reintegration, cycling, measurement. One step missing and the advantage drops significantly. This is the difference. It's measurable, not theoretical, not motivational, measurable. The practitioners who apply this method score measurably higher on skill assessments. They reach performance milestones faster. They reach them with fewer total practice hours. The efficiency is real. Now it gets real. The payoff is this: you stop thinking of your skill as one monolithic thing that either improves or doesn't. You start seeing it as a system of components. Some are strong, some are weak, some are interdependent. That awareness alone changes how you practice. You stop practicing the whole skill, hoping something improves. You diagnose, isolate, strengthen, integrate, measure. You're not hoping anymore. You're engineering. And that's when progress becomes inevitable. The most important part: mastery is not about practicing longer, it's about practicing smarter through the architecture of the skill. The skill itself teaches you which components matter. The limiting factors reveal themselves through honest diagnosis. The integration happens naturally when components are strong. This system isn't a hack, it's how skills actually learn. Measure every component or you're just guessing. The plateau is where consolidation happens, not where you quit. Focus on the bottleneck, not the strength. More deliberate practice frameworks coming. Don't waste another month on autopilot.